we want to make sure it's a good fit. It's not just filling a bed, it's making sure it's a good fit for your loved one, their interests, their hobbies, their abilities, so we can have a good, safe, rounded environment for them.
G'day, I'm Deborah Caldo. Welcome to the Red Giraffe Solutions Expanding Worlds podcast, where we aim to support you as you help your young person with additional needs plan for their future, a future where they're safe, secure, and live a rewarding and fulfilling life. From around the world, I share stories and I share solutions from people making this possible right now. I'm a parent of a young person with additional needs, so I understand the challenges. Many of the people I've interviewed on this podcast have already helped me design a better future for my daughter, and I hope that they might help you as well to imagine what's possible for your young person. This podcast is made possible by Red Giraffe Solutions, which is a project I'm proud to be part of, supporting families to build a better future for their children. We now have available at Red Giraffe Solutions an online course called Independent Cooking Made Easy. This is a new and unique approach we developed when we realised traditional cooking techniques and recipes were never going to enable our daughter to cook without some support or supervision. It's a safe, simple system that uses no more than 5 ingredients, has no weighing, cutting or chopping, and no lifting of heavy dishes. Each of the 16 recipes in the course includes a step-by-step video of our daughter making the meal, plus a visual recipe card. We developed this for our daughter to solve her challenges with cooking, and every recipe in the course she can and does genuinely cook for herself. You can find a link to the course in this episode's show notes. One of the things I like about doing this podcast is that I get to hear a variety of ideas. Of course, often the solutions shared aren't necessarily ones that apply to my daughter, but I hope that somewhere, someone listening might find exactly what they're looking for. This week's episode is an example of something that isn't for me, not just because it's in Texas, but also because the type of housing solution my guest, Will Hoermann from Marbridge, is talking about is one that my daughter has already said she doesn't want. And I'll be honest, I went into our conversation with some preconceptions about the model Will's talking about. But as you'll hear from Will, Marbridge is about as far from those stereotypes about group homes as it's possible to get. Maybe that's because it was started by parents who wanted more for their son at a time when there was very little, or maybe it's because of the passion of people like Will. But apart from shattering some stereotypes, what my conversation with Will reminded me is that it's important not to forget long-term planning. And by that, I mean what happens to our children when they get to retirement age. I'll be honest, it's one of those things I'd never thought about until Will talked about this in the context of Marbridge having been around so long that they have retirees that they now support. So although Marbridge won't be right for everyone, it will be right for someone. And the key here is still that word choice. And Marbridge should be just one of the many options that our young people have to choose from. So let's hear more about Marbridge from Will. Thank you so much for talking to me today. Can we start off by hearing a little bit about you and then also tell us a little bit about the history of Marbridge?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to share. My name is Will Hoermann. I'm the Director of Admissions for Marbridge. I have been here for 24 years. In my background, I'm a native Texan. I grew up in West Texas, went to school in East Texas, and then ended up in Austin. My background was long-term care administration and gerontology. So I worked in retirement communities, and I liked that, but it was also, I noticed a trend there. Sadly, in the elder care business, there seemed to be more of a we're filling a bed. It's like a Medicare number or insurance number as opposed to really getting to know the person. And I get to know the family and individual, then they would pass. It wasn't meant to be long term. So a friend of mine said, I heard about this place called Marbridge. It's different than what you do, but I think you'd be good at it. Made a call, submitted a resume, came out for an interview. At that time, our president and the 2 vice presidents had combined, I want to say 100 years of military experience. I'm about the least military guy. The interview was terrifying. I thought I bombed, and I went home. My wife said, how do you think you did? And I go, no way. It was horrible. I guess we'll look for something else. They did like me. They called me back, and then I came back out, and I met the Bridges, and this will tie into the historical component. The Bridges, Marge and Ed Bridges, are the founders of our program. Marjorie is where we get the name Marbridge, and they have a son, Jim, who was a country birth at that time, a forceps delivery that went wrong. So he had his challenges, and mom was, I believe, from South Carolina, dad was from Atlanta. They had a furniture business, and they were always moving to find a place for their son, not just in Texas, but anywhere in the late 40s, early 50s. Special education hadn't started. People were telling him they should put him away in programs that were called homes for the delirious. And they were like, no, he's our son. And yes, he's got some challenges, but he's part of the community. They looked all over the country at the few places that were around, and they just decided we need to start something for our son and others like him. And with their son, a few other young men with developmental disability, Mr. and Mrs. Bridges were the ranch foreman and the educator, and we were here in Southwest Austin. We're about 20 minutes from downtown, about 20 minutes from the airport. And at that time, it was 300 acres and there was nothing out here. And it was a working ranch. And over the years, they would do some business enterprises, animal husbandry, turkey farms, catfish farming, furniture repair, different things. And then they started getting more and more people that, hey, I have a brother or I have a loved one. And at one point it was just for males. And then they had a separate female wing out in West Texas near Abilene. I guess around the late 90s, early 2000s, they combined everything to one campus. We had one level, a dormitory setting, and then we saw there's some people that do well here, but maybe they don't need quite as much support. They're a little more independent and they're growing and have some different skills. So then we had a cottage setting, and then we've been here 71 years now, but after being here for 25, 30 years, they were like, we're having some residents that are getting older and needing more care. They didn't want to have to call their families and say, I'm sorry, we can no longer meet your loved one's needs anymore. So that's when the nursing care level came about. So today we have the ranch, which is the first level of assisted living, the village, which is our second level of assisted living and the higher level of independence and accountability. And then we have the villa, which is a skilled nursing care community for those that are more medically fragile. So from those in 1953, what was just literally a mom and pop organization, mom and dad, their son, and a few other men, a working ranch, to now around 270 residents, 300 employees, and 3 assisted living communities on one campus. And Austin has literally grown and surrounded us. So now we've got conveniences nearby for healthcare, for employment. We have people that work at restaurants, grocery stores, lumber yards, you name it, hospitals nearby, and then also for recreation and activities. Then a little bit back to me is I had volunteered for Special Olympics in college. I had a good friend that had a sibling with special needs, but I never really thought about whether I'd be working in this field or not. But what it did, since I'd worked in elder care and established those relationships, to me, I saw an opportunity to still make those bonds and learn about people and their families and get to know them, but for more of a long term. So it's a little different feel where somebody might say, here's my 87-year-old father. He's got Parkinson's. We just wanted to be comfortable for his remaining years. To now the energy and excitement of, here's my 30-year-old with Down syndrome. We think he's got a lot of potential. We can't wait to see him grow. And to be part of that and see their growth and get to know the family and help them through all these changes. It's been wonderful. I really enjoy being here. And we have a lot of staff that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years.
Can we talk about the process then of someone finding Marbridge?
Someone would reach out with an inquiry and I'll talk to them, get to know about their loved one, their needs, abilities. First and foremost, try to see if it might be a good fit and if there's potential there, and then invite them for a tour to come see us. Because I think it's important. Sometimes because if there's limited options, we might have an appealing service, but we want to make sure it's a good fit, right? It's not just filling a bed, it's making sure it's a good fit for your loved one, their interests, their hobbies, their abilities, so we can have a good, safe, rounded environment for them. And sometimes when a family comes here, they see the layout, they might go, no, this isn't what I'm looking for. And that's okay. It's just who we are. But we do a tour and I'll answer their questions. I might do several tours. Sometimes I tour mom and dad and siblings. And I also love to tour the prospective candidate so I can get their idea of what is important to them. Sometimes parents want to know about medical and finances, and the loved one with special needs wants to know, do you get Wi-Fi? Can I bring my Xbox? And then we have an application process, paperwork, documentation, basic stuff that I think most families probably have files of already. And then we'll do a review meeting where we meet with the individual and the family and we make an important decision. Do we feel we can adequately meet your loved one's needs? And if so, which of our levels of care is the most appropriate? And then if we have availability, we'll schedule their admission date or they might move to our waiting list because we do have some wait list at some of our communities currently. I can tell you, being here, I've recruited and gotten to know families sometimes for 4 or 5 years. It's just, I'm not ready yet, but I'm glad you're here. And there's other times it almost becomes more of an urgent situation because maybe they've lived at home with parents and the parents are sick or passing and now siblings are involved. I would much rather prefer the former of planning, taking your time and getting to know if it's a good fit so you don't have to rush a decision. Our population tends to be pretty routine oriented. And so the longer they're at home in an environment, they know that routine. And so the adjustment then of now starting a new environment, but I'm also losing a loved one, that can be difficult. That's two major life adjustments. We found if someone can transition at an earlier age, it tends to do better for their success.
You were talking there about the different priorities that families have and maybe parents and siblings have over the young people themselves. For families, is it really the focus on, obviously they'll be well looked after. And I know you have to generalize, but what are they trying to get? And then what are the young people saying to you that they want? Apart from obvious Wi-Fi, which is the most important thing ever.
That's right. For parents, it is supervision, safety, which I can tell you our three levels are the ranch, the village, and the villas. And all of those communities, we have 24-hour wake staff supervision. There's not like house parents that like sleep when the residents sleep. We have rotating shifts. So it's a morning, afternoon, overnight, weekend staff. So they're always there. I think supervision and safety, we are an open campus. Now, that being said, we are private property. People aren't just driving up and a lot of times our residents, if they see something, they'll come tell us. There's a car here. I don't know. Can you check it out? It's their community. It's their home. Safety and activities and the training that we offer, which we do electives, but we also do like job skills, horticulture, gardening. We found physical fitness very important. So cardio, meditation, weightlifting, basketball, all the different sports throughout the year we do. So there's some that are focused on that if they've heard about a very specific training. And financially, we are a private nonprofit. It's a monthly tuition. So there's planning that goes into that and making sure it's not just covered by someone's Social Security or disability benefit. There is some costs that the family will be responsible for. So that makes a difference too. For the residents or prospective candidate, kind of the peers and can I do this? Can I bring my pet? I guess that semblance of life that they have at home, what can transfer here? I think once they know that, you're going to get food, you're going to get Wi-Fi, you can bring your CDs and your DVD collections. We have semi-private accommodations, but they have their own room and space. And we also do the best matchmaking we can. And when someone does move here, if they're accepted, we do have a bit of an adjustment period because a lot of our residents, if they've been at home, then if they need something, they're used to having mom and dad right around the corner. And mom and dad getting good at anticipating their loved one's needs. So during the adjustment, we're not trying to take the place of family, but they need to know, here's my direct care support person in the morning. If I need to get this, here's how I do that. Just the processes and how they do that. And most of the time, that adjustment period is a lot easier on the new resident. It's much more difficult on family because they're wondering how things are going. But the residents, the new kid on campus, does have a schedule individualized. So if you're a resident here and I'm a resident here, we're both going to have different schedules. It's not that workshop kind of mentality where regardless of your abilities or interest, you all do the same thing. Here, I might have a fishing class and gardening and then basketball and cardio. You might have choir and then horseback riding and yoga. And we do spring, summer, fall semesters. While there's not a degree or certificate program, it is ongoing learning and training opportunities. So no one's just sitting around. They're staying active and learning.
It leads on to what I was going to ask you to talk about a little bit, which is the first bit is about the importance of community for the people that are in Marbridge, but also the importance of interacting with the outside community. Because I think a lot of the criticisms of where our young people go to live is that they end up being isolated.
As a parent, though, I think we all want that for our loved one. We want them to have a sense of community, a safe environment, friends, something to get up and look forward to each day. And I think we do a really good job of that here. But you're right. The isolation piece, there are some programs where it is more institutional and you're, for lack of a better term, putting someone away. And if they don't want to participate in something, they don't have to participate in something. Here we have a structure and we want people to get out and about and interact. We have a lot of volunteers, and being a nonprofit, I think we have over 250 volunteers and mentors and coaches and instructors. So it's a pretty active community on our campus. We do a lot of interaction with the surrounding Austin community. So there's activities and events, but a lot of our residents work in the community is nearby within probably a 10 to 15 mile radius of our campus. People plan outings. Some of our residents at the village are higher level of independence, can do more independent outings. And so they still have some of those opportunities. Again, if it's appropriate, if it's safe. And that's one thing we do. We like to give people opportunities, but we also want to show us here that what the term, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? We're looking for those that say, I want to try this and do it. I can show that I can be safe and make good choices. We are trying to do more with the surrounding community, not just in-house.
I think there's a lot in there about planning ahead and the challenges of change. But as well, I think there's a historical context worth thinking about. Clearly, what Marbridge looked like when it began is very different than the Marbridge of today. Not just in what it does and the way it does it, but there's also a location issue. Perhaps almost by accident, the location for Marbridge has become an asset, enabling it to connect more with the community. And I would imagine those links will only get stronger. But it does reinforce the important role location plays in any housing solution and what that can mean in terms of connections with local communities. And there's also another underlying theme in here about the expectations people have, not so much the families, but the people who come to live at Marbridge. And that's one of the topics we explore more in next week's episode in part 2 of my conversation with Will. Plus he also shares some invaluable tips for families when it comes to planning ahead. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that the stories and solutions shared on here help you as you support your young person to create their future. If you know anyone who would find the ideas useful, please share the podcast with them. To support the podcast, please consider finding out more about the Independent Cooking Made Easy online course. It's a safe, simple system that works. There are links to the course in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn at Deborah Caldo. I'd love to have a conversation with you on any of the topics we all care about. Bye for now.